Since the start of President Donald Trump's second term, one of the groups he's targeted are transgender people. From an executive order declaring the existence of only 2 non-changeable genders, to sports bans and funding cuts for gender-affirming care, how is this affecting young trans adults? We talked about it with 4 of them on Politics IRL. I wanted to start by just noting that we've heard that attacks on the trans community, it's nothing new. It's been going on for quite a long time. But I'm wondering if in 2025, does it feel different? And if so, how? Julie, start with you.
There's so much more visibility on us as a community. It's so much more like present on the sort of like American consciousness. And because of that, like, it feels so much more targeted.
It's so complicated because sometimes I feel like, and you know, y'all can jump off this if you want. Sometimes I feel like that there's like this, it's a good thing that we're visible, but it's also a bad thing that we're visible at the same time,
Yeah.
you know? When I was growing up, I didn't really have like any like trans icons or like people who were in the media that were trans that I could look at, but I still turned out trans. That being said, it's like, it's cool that we have like more people now who are like in all kinds of industries and fields and things like that. But because of this visibility, also feels like that there is a bit of more of like a target on our backs.
I think that things have definitely shifted, especially in the United States with trans visibility. I have to say, like, it makes me feel a little bit guilty that I've enjoyed, when I was outside of the United States, the lack of visibility, just because I wasn't as nervous about somebody, you know, saying something. Like, I think people in the US feel so much more confident now to like harass somebody because of the amount of visibility of trans people. And in countries where maybe we don't have as many rights, but it's not as talked about, I almost feel guilty for feeling safer, you know? And that is not something that I think people talk about a lot, because it's like, well, we're like the land of the free, like we have so many rights theoretically, but are we protected? You know, it's debatable.
Well, have other folks felt safer outside the United States?
I think that this might be like a privilege for like certain trans people who like, I don't really want to get into the whole nuance of like passing or, you know, stuff like that, right? Like there's a whole other conversation there in regards to that, like privilege and stuff like that, right? I like personally do not get read as trans a lot of the time. I really like being out and I really like being visible as a trans woman. And so like I choose to sort of like present that way and engage with the world that way and sort of like enjoy the community like that comes with that in a way. But like also because I can sort of just like, my transness is like conditional in a way, right? So I can sort of like present in a way that can like feel safer, but then I'm sort of in fear of like, what if somebody finds out? Like, so I think it's complicated. I don't know if you agree with that.
I definitely agree, because even when I'm like, you're right, because even when I was in other countries where I felt safer, there was still always that underlying anxiety of like, that you usually don't get if you're fully out.
Yeah.
Like right now, for example, like I know everyone here knows I'm trans. I know.
Really?
So I don't, right? Like I don't have to be like, hopefully they won't see my legal name.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's not even like, there's actual genuine fear of harm in some places where you have that. And there's also like, I just don't want to have to explain everything. Like, please just let me go through customs. Like, don't let me explain so I do agree with you on that.
You mentioned fear of harm, and this gets to something else that I think the trans community experiences. I'm wondering, on a day-to-day basis, what are some worries or fears that you may carry with you? Phoebe.
I think there's, I guess on like on a small scale level, there's a worry that people just might see you differently. Like, you know, there's a lot of stigma around being trans. Like, it's weird, it's freaky, and people might not say that outright, but there's still that like underlying connotation around the word transgender. And so I think I worry a lot that people might just see me differently. There's obviously like a lot of hostility surrounding trans people. And yeah, so even if someone like is questioning their gender, they might not feel like it's safe to be out because they don't know how people around them might react.
I mean, especially right now, like existing as a trans person on like social media and
Yeah.
internet spaces is not super fun. And especially like recently, there's been a lot of like those rollbacks on like diversity, equity, and inclusion, and protections around it. I know like Meta has rolled back a lot of like the kinds of like keywords and tags that are like, you know, being not only just being suppressed, but also like the kind of hate speech that they're now allowing in a lot of places. So there's that, and that kind of worries me because like I'm like a very recently out trans person. Like I came out like maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And I also kind of felt like I've existed within a little bit of like a blue bubble, a little bit of a liberal bubble on my like college campus and things like that. And so it worries me as someone who's like about to graduate, like, oh, is the real world's not gonna be like this or whatever? Because I see so much, you know, hostility on the internet and on social media. And so that worries me a lot of just like future kind of things, like how will I be treated in like professional spaces and things like that.
So in general, I think I'm a more anxious person about a lot of these things because when I talk to my other friends who are trans, especially living in Boston, they're kind of like, why are you so worried about that? But the biggest thing with me is I'm so afraid with the bathroom sting. Like I just avoid the bathroom right now. Like if I can in public, like I will not try either one because I feel like there's no right answer. Like if you say I'm female, fine, I'll use the woman's bathroom. But then people will look at me strange, you know, like potentially, especially now as I'm starting to more, I guess, blend in. But then I use the men's bathroom. Is that also wrong? I mean, there's like, I feel like I'm in a phase, I think, of transitioning where I'm trying so hard to almost like appease people in a way. It's like a weird where I'm not at that phase yet where I'm like, no, like I'm gonna do what I want, I'm gonna be happy. I'm still in that in-between where I'm like, I would like to not be bothered. You know, I feel like there's no right answer, and I'm always afraid of even in Boston or even Massachusetts having a problem in the bathroom.
When I find a gender neutral bathroom, I'm like, oh my God, there's one.
I'm so relieved.
I don't know about y'all, but I'm just like I don't care. I'm gonna use like the women's restroom, like, and whatever happens, right? Like I don't know. I'm not going to let anybody else tell me what I can and can't do there. And also, it would just be like incredibly unsafe for me to use the men's restroom in so many situations.
Right.
So like, I'm not gonna be like that canary in the coal mine of like, I don't know. There's no reason to do that. And like, part of that is like, I moved to Boston from Texas, and like being out in Texas and like going through the like awkward early second puberty, like in Texas of like transitioning and not fun, you know? And like Boston is a bubble, like in a way, but also not, right? Like I've been called like a pedophile, like here.
Online or in person?
In person, yeah. Okay. I was at like a small town pride in like Bolton, Massachusetts, and like, yeah, like I was with my best friend and her 5-year-old daughter, and like, yeah, that's just a thing here, the same as it is anywhere. And in some ways, like people feel emboldened here to do stuff because, I mean, in Texas, they just like queer bashing is a thing, right? Like, so I don't know. I think that it's mixed, right? There is no like amazing place in the U.S. to be a trans person.
Yeah, I think oftentimes Massachusetts bills itself as the blue bubble, which Gabriel and Julie mentioned.
Yeah.
Phoebe, looked like you kind of had a comment on that.
Yeah. Well, I think like a lot of queer people kind of like attract other queer people. Like we kind of stick together, and I think part of it is out of a necessity, you know, because those are the places that we feel safe. We feel like people will understand us, that they'll protect us. We don't have to worry about judgment or discrimination, hopefully, in those places. And so we kind of like get that security from like our communities, but as a result, we sometimes can get like a false idea of, you know, how safe things are in the real world.
Sure.
And so I think it can be a bit of a shock for us when we go into our workplaces, we go in online spaces, and then are like, oh wow, like not everyone's gay, not everyone's trans. It's kind of a shock. But
do you live in Somerville or JP, you know?
But I think like circling back to the bathrooms thing, it's like, well, why are people so weird about this issue in the first place? And I think it's because people have this view that like male and female are things that like are like divinely ordained and they're 100% separate and they never cross. And because like we have this strong idea of a binary, any sort of question to that freaks people out. And it's not really an issue of like, is it actually safe to use the bathroom or not, but questioning the idea of what if we don't have separate spaces all the time for men and women? And that's so scary.
Yeah. Something that I think about a lot is that like, I think that the existence of trans people like makes people realize that there's a question around like gender or sex or like, you know, and that this whole thing is like a, you know, bimodal distribution. Like there are plenty of intersex people that like all of that, right? But I think it's the same reason why people get mad at vegans. Or, you know, like, as funny as that is, it makes people, like, question, like, oh, this person, like, sat and thought and made a decision for this. And, like, maybe it's for health reasons, maybe it's for, like, animal cruelty reasons. But, like, I don't want to think about why that person made this decision on this question. And so I'm just going to have an emotional response to it. And I think it's the same with, like, gender, where, like, everybody's sort of handed a gender. And by questioning it, we're sort of, like, you know, questioning this societal thing that we've been handed. And so other people like don't want to question if their own gender fits, like if this is a thing that like is changeable, you know, like all of that.
Yeah, and that question like threatens.
Yeah, it threatens that existence.
I think in addition to something Phoebe said, which is that the bathrooms have become this big issue, another big issue is sports. One of the first executive orders, as we know, that President Trump handed down was an effort to ban trans athletes from women's sports. And this is not just a Republican issue now. Massachusetts Congressman Seth Moulton and California Governor Gavin Newsom have both said after the election that they oppose trans athletes in women's sports to some degree. They gave separate comments on this, but it was a real break from progressives. What do you all think about this issue of sports and why has it become such a lightning rod issue?
I think that it's important to look at like what Moulton said specifically, because his actual comment was something along the lines of he doesn't want his two daughters being run over by males on the field. And I think that that really like highlights the like type of transphobia that this is, which is it's just a question of like, am I a woman, right? It has nothing to do with like athletic ability or, you know, any of those sorts of things. This is just like, hate, like this is just like a fear of trans women, and an idea that like we're not women, that like, you know, it's the transphobic like man in a dress type of thing, right? Which just isn't true based on how I live my life and like the way that I'm perceived by the world around me. And the fact that I am the weakest of all of my friends who are women, right? Like, I don't know, so. Yeah.
I mean, I think it really is a lot of the right inventing a problem that's not even there.
Because we know there's so few.
Exactly.
Trans athletes, I mean.
Oh, I thought you meant problems.
Oh, no. There's so few trans athletes. I mean, former Governor Charlie Baker, who now is president of the NCAA, was recently asked how many trans athletes out of 500,000, and he estimated around 10 at the most.
Right.
So go ahead with what you were saying, Gabriel.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something that we see on a professional level. It's not something that we see on a collegiate level. If anything, it really is like the Title IX or the ban on trans women in Title IX institutions is attacking kids. And where we don't really see huge, like, you know, divides between, like, athletic ability and things like that. And I'm a little radical when it comes to this because I played soccer for like 12 years. I was not out when I was playing soccer. But I do think that this ban is more of like an exclusionary and just like getting rid of opportunities for kids to like play things and do things that they want to do. So, and I also do think that there should just be more opportunities in general for like everyone to play together, and that a lot of like the gender divide that we see in sports is because of like misogyny and sexism for years and years, where only
And racism,
exactly, where only certain people could play sports. So I'm a little radical when it comes to that, where I think that there should be more organized things, sports, where people can all play together. But it is kind of inventing a problem that just is not there, you know?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noticed this interesting thing with the sports debate and like in regards to just trans people. of like people always having something to say about, you know, trans women being in sports, or they never talk about trans men, of course. It's always trans women.
Exactly.
I just noticed that with the whole sports debate, there's always like this idea of like this invisible boogeyman that's like controlling everything, like this, like these trans women, they're sneaking into the sports and they're taking everything. And I feel like, yeah, like, but I think this is something that's always done with like every minority group. There's like this fear of a threat, and it's usually one that when they're actually faced with this quote unquote threat, they don't react the same way. I'm not saying always, but I've noticed that when people who actually meet trans people, the majority of them do not act so vitriolic the way online that they act. They're like, oh, because they usually didn't expect it. You know,
They didn't expect somebody who's like 5'7" and, you know.
Yeah. They don't expect it at all. Or like they'll be like, wow, so you're like one of the normal ones, right? And it's like, actually, probably what you're seeing online is the minority, if it's even true.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's like this invisible boogeyman idea. It's the same. They've done it with black women. They've done it with like Jews. You know, like always like this invisible threat. But then it's like, have you met a trans person? Can you name anybody in your life?
Well, and I think I struggle to talk about this a lot too, because like I am sort of small, and so I don't want it to come off as a like defensive, well, I should be able to play sports because I fit into like your traditional box of a woman, right? I do think that like trans women who are tall or like big, like deserve to play sports just the same as anybody else. And they're not going to like run over other people, right? Like that's, I don't know.
And you see so many of these transphobic attacks on cis women who are just like not fitting that box that everyone thinks they should be
like,
in.
Amon, or the Olympian from Armenia.
And Barbara Banda, and like, it's just like, it really is stemming from a broader issue, but like, it's hurting all women, basically. It's hurting everyone.
And nobody cared, like a lot of people just did not care about women's sports until recently. Like,
you only care about women's sports until there's trans people involved, huh?
Like there's this joke that was like, oh, now everyone cares about women's soccer. Like now everyone, like Gabriel, you cared about women's soccer, but then everyone else suddenly,
I'm a real fan.
You're like, where's all this coming from?
No bandwagon jumpers over here.
Like get these fake fans out of here.
I actually only root for the teams that have trans people on them. So I'm a real fan.
So who do you feel has your back? If it's not Democrats, or maybe it is, or if it's not Republicans and maybe it is, you know, who is it? Who is it?
It just really, like, especially in recent years, just the rollback on all these policies is just so disheartening from like both sides of the political spectrum. It's like, well, the one thing we can agree on is we hate trans people is kind of what it feels like right now. I mean, historically, it's always been like trans people who form those communities and take care of themselves, you know? And when I feel disheartened about that stuff, I go to my trans friends and we kind of have that solidarity. Even I think people who aren't trans who are in the LGBT community, I think because there's just been a long history of solidarity between them, I feel like they have my back. And it's really important, I think, to have those people in your life who support you, because it's tough out there in the big world.
Yeah.
It's each other, is what I'm gathering.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm really thinking that, you know, out of the wake of this election, that a lot of people are going to start coming back to their local communities a lot more. And then we kind of have to do like what the Republicans really wanted to do, which is like the states' rights kind of thing, which is like we kind of need to like go into our communities and really support them from within. Because it seems like the higher national government's not going to do that for us. So it does seem like we're really based in community a lot more here. So many great organizations here, like in my city, and I'm seeing more even in my hometown in Kansas, which is like crazy. It's so cool. So I know there's some people there, but I think a lot of it is going to be like our job now.
I know like a lot of people in the community are kind of saying this idea that like nobody's on our side, that we have nobody. That idea really depresses me. Like I think I would get like so miserable if I like kept feeling and thinking that way. So like I try to think that most people are on our side. There's just this warped narrative by the media and the news about who trans people are. And again, it's like this invisible enemy, but then when they actually meet a trans person, I like to think that most people would not act that way.
Yeah.
So I like to think most people are on our side, if just in case just to stay sane, maybe.
Yeah.
Because if I kept thinking everybody was against me, I think I would probably fall into like a depression, because it's hard to think that way and stay sane, you know.
No, absolutely. Something that I found also is like, if you give a lot of cis people avenues, like if you're running a fundraiser and you go to like your cis friends and you're like, hey, like Trans Emergency Fund of Boston like needs like money. They needed, here's a donation link. A lot of people are like really happy to support that, but I think a lot of people struggle to understand how to support the trans community and like, support trans people, like, and what does that mean?
Let's talk about that. What kind of support would you all like to see, and what does that look like from allies and from anyone?
I think as the states are pushing for more like legislation to like take back or take away trans rights, I think we need to make sure we keep like a pulse on like local and state news to make sure that we're voting in support of trans people. I know there's like a lot of state legislation rolling out right now that we should get on that. But I think just even in like people's conversations with each other, like transphobic jokes or transphobic rhetoric is kind of just so easily accepted, and to just not do that.
So folks should knock that down.
Oh yeah, right away. Like,
Okay.
or even anything that kind of holds the idea that there's like a binary system of gender, or, you know, oh, women are just like that, or men are, you know, men are all trash, or like stuff that enforces this gender stereotyping and gender binary, or that there's things inherent to a specific gender, because those are all kind of part of like the binary.
I think like a way to like support like trans people is like, I mean, people really gotta speak up, you know? Like, I've had so many times where like I'm sitting in conferences and events and like I'll get like explicitly misgendered, and like I notice people looking but no one's saying anything because they don't wanna like be the person to like, but it's not even just pronouns. I think the Democrats have like made it like this thing that like it's all we care about is pronouns or something, and like I don't. But it's just a matter of like respecting somebody's humanity.
Yeah.
And yeah, like so it's just that, or like just say something, you know, like there's a really good situation I remember that I was in where someone mentioned, like jokingly, I was like, oh, so nowadays, like we can all be attack helicopters, right, as like a gender, like this is ridiculous. Like no one can just be
like
whatever.
7 years old.
I know.
No one can just be whatever they want to be, right? And the girl with me said, no, actually, you can be whatever you want to be. I have no problem with that. And the other guy was just silent because he didn't know that she was going to actually respond.
Yeah.
Right. You're bringing up something that made me think of a recent moment in Congress with Massachusetts Congressman Bill Keating and Congresswoman from Delaware, Sarah McBride, the first openly trans member of Congress, where Congresswoman McBride was misgendered in a hearing. And if anyone has not seen this moment, we're going to link it in the comments here on our YouTube video, so please do watch. Congressman Keating called it out. What do y'all think of that moment?
I mean, it's such like aggressive allyship, honestly. That's what I call it, aggressive allyship. And sometimes it's like, it's one of those things that does kind of make me think of like my friends who are cis or who are straight, and like, they're like, they stand up for you, and you like are like sitting in the back like, oh my gosh, secondhand embarrassment. Like, so it's really cool to see stuff like that. I really like hope that there's more people, you know, who will stand up and do things like that.
And like, I think it's important too to note in that case with the senator that like, it wasn't just misgendering. It was like a malicious, like he was intending to cause harm.
Right.
He did it multiple times.
There's a difference between like making a little mistake, which I think people are now very nervous about.
Keating gave him
like
a chance.
Malicious.
Keating said, can you please repeat yourself?
Yes.
And
exactly.
there wasn't, he didn't fix his error.
It was like, it was like almost like he was like assuming the best at first. He gave him a chance to like fix what he said, and he did not. So there's like a malicious nature in these things that are happening. So I like hope people who are like watching this and who are like cis and who aren't involved in the trans community, that they realize that this is not just this little thing. It's a lot about the intent.
Right.
You know, that's so important in these cases to realize, you know, people aren't being hypersensitive over these tiny things. There is a malicious intent in the way they are speaking. They are attempted to dehumanize a person in front of them.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, so I just think like, that's why it's so important to like say something, you know, like, because we're putting ourselves at risk sometimes by saying something ourselves, you know. So sometimes I will stay silent about, most of the time actually I do. I don't want to rock the boat, okay? Like, you know, I wish I was more assertive in that way. It just would be so nice if more cis people like said something. Not just in misgendering, just like in any way of disrespect. And like, I think he did a great job with like doing that.
How do y'all feel about McBride in Congress? Because like, I think I absolutely do not envy her position, right? And I think that like she's in this place of like, you know, her stance seems to be like not wanting to rock the boat, right? Like she's sort of like not challenging a lot of these things. Like her reaction actually in this video is to like, you know, misgender the chair back, right? Like before.
Yeah, I saw a lot of comments.
I know, yeah.
It would have been even better.
But like, I think, no, she did. But like, I like struggle with it because she's taking this stance, like even publicly, that like trans rights are like a distraction, right? Like, and she's sort of not, like she is allowing these things to just happen around her and kind of not standing up for herself in a lot of ways. And like, I get that like as an individual, but like she does represent a lot of people, like not just Delaware, but like also all trans Americans.
Yeah.
And like there are like trans congressional staffers who like after the recent bathroom like rule changes, like they're not allowed to use like the bathroom of their like gender. And so you have like people who look like men going into the women's room, and you have like people who look like women going into the men's room because they're trans.
I think it's so hard, right? Because you already got into like this prestigious like role in government, and like I understand where she's coming from, where she might not want to be known as the trans person on, you know, like legislative, but, you know, and it's the same thing as other things where you're like, I don't want to be like the one black person that was, I don't want to be just known for that. It's the same thing as like, but it's also hard because it's like, you do have a chance to make things better for your community by being in that position, but it's hard because like, yeah, you don't want to be just known for that. So I get why she might be turning away from, but yeah, it's tough because like.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to say like it's indefensible, right? I'm just saying like I think it's.
No, I totally understand.
And I think we're agreed on that.
And I will say, you know, she just started. She has time.
Yeah.
But I also do think that there is power in the fact that she's probably like paving the way for a lot more trans people, hopefully, to be running for office.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're like such a small part of the population, y'all. It's crazy that like we're being
a lot of surveys and research estimate
point.
it's just 1% of the U.S. adult population that is trans.
And just because it's so small, of course, does not mean that we're not there. That's like the main thing.
But we still deserve representation.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I want to ask you all a closing question, recognizing that there might be young trans individuals who are watching this who are early in their journey. What do you know now that you didn't know then that you would tell them?
I think something that I know now that I didn't know then is just like, it's a journey. And it can be as long as you want it to be. You don't have to come out immediately, even if everyone is telling you to. Even if we're so visible and people are saying like, oh, like being visible is good. You represent everyone. You represent all the trans people, all the black trans people. Ever. So, you know, protect your peace, especially in times like these. I think that's really, really important. And find the community where you can, even if it's not, like, again, I'm from Kansas. I was surrounded by mostly white, cis, hetero people. And I found community on the internet, and I found community when I went to college. Like, you know, it gets better, basically. Protect your peace. I think that's like the biggest thing.
I think a big one for me, and I think I'm still getting better at this, is like, I think that when you first come out as trans, you become so, or when you first figure it out, I should say, you become so worried about like, this one thing is going to ruin like my life. Like, you know, like I will not be able to do anything anymore. Like I have to give up on whatever goals I had, whatever aspirations, you know, like if I wanted to go into Congress, for example, like that's it, you know, like, But I think something that I've learned is, especially what I would want young people to know, is that if it wasn't being trans, it was going to be something else someone was not going to like about you. So you just have to like work with what you have and just know that some people will love you for who you are. And sometimes just, you know, it'll always be something that somebody will not like about you. And you will have to, at some point, always end up accepting yourself in the end.
If I could say something to trans kids right now, it would be that you are gonna find people who love you no matter who you are or who you become. And I think that was like my biggest fear when I was questioning my gender, worrying if I should just like, should I just push this down into a box and never open it? Is that I was afraid that people were gonna see me differently, or maybe like people wouldn't love me anymore. And that's just not true. Like there's people who are gonna love you no matter what, no matter how you change, who you become, what your name's gonna be, what you look like. Like there is unconditional love out there, and it is going to be there for you. Like that's not a question. And I know that sounds kind of corny, but if the only thing that's holding you back is that you're afraid people aren't going to like you, or they might see you differently, that's not something you have to worry about. It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
I think the real ones are worth it.
The real ones.
You know, like the richness that I feel from the people who have stayed is so much better than anything else, you know.
I find out too, like the more genuine that you are in like your identity and like towards other people, I do feel like you attract the most like love in your life, the more genuine you are. Like I didn't think that was going to be the case, but like with what you were saying about worrying about people not loving you, or like, I feel like I've had some of the best friendships after coming out because I'm so genuine in myself and so self-assured in a way I never was in my first 20 years. Like people might be like, well, you did such a good job when you were sick, you know, like what happened, you know? And I'm like, no, I was constantly nervous. I was constantly unsure. So I guess, yeah, when you're more genuine, you just attract love that you never thought you would receive.
Yeah. I think what I'll say is that like,
sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, that was a good conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what I'll say is that like trans futures are possible,
Yes.
and they can look like anything, right? And I think that now there's sort of this visibility into like the exceptional trans people, right? Like the actors, the like YouTubers, the like TikTok stars, right? Like who have these sort of like the success stories, but like most trans people are pretty normal, you know, like I live a very normal life. I have a roommate in Somerville and it's great. Like I love my life. And yeah, I think being trans can look like anything you want, and that includes it being pretty normal.
My dad recently found out about my name, Ethan, and I was like, well, Mom, like, what did he say? And he said like, oh, okay. And I was like, that's it? Like, you know, like, I don't want to talk to my dad, but I was like, it's probably over after this. But he was just like, all right,
Yeah.
Ethan.
So you have more positive experience than you might expect.
It was boring.
Right.
Also, the internet, not a real place, right? Like you can find community and you can get support through there, but also like, please go find like in-person community too, and like, go find like support there.
Some great advice
Yeah.
from all of you. This has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you for having it.
Are you a member of the trans community who wants to share your thoughts? Please like, comment, and subscribe.